if you've talked to me for probably more than 5 minutes, you probably have heard that I was a summer missionary at a summer camp hosted by Life Team called Cove Crest. And since I'm going to be sharing some of my experiences from that, I thought I should give you a little bit of what that entailed. So it was a Catholic summer camp for teens, and we were serving them, leading them closer to Christ. And I was there for 6 weeks, which included a training week. And each day we rooted ourselves in prayer and tried to make everything that we did bring somebody closer to Christ, including ourselves. So now that you know a little bit of a backstory, on to the topic of the night, called to Holiness. And so like Victor said, last week he talked about how we were created for greatness, and he used the quote from St. Benedict, or Pope Benedict, saying that the world offers us comfort, but we were not made for comfort, we were made for greatness. Not momentary greatness, but eternal greatness. And he showed the Lion King clip and said that we need to remember who we are. And so tonight I'm going to talk about how we are to live out this greatness. So I want you guys to think about some people who you consider live out greatness in their faith life. So anybody? Names? Anybody?
Pope Francis.
Okay. Anybody else? Come on.
My dad.
Your dad?
Mother Teresa.
Mother Teresa? You guys can't think of anybody else who's great in their faith?
Our church is in trouble.
Yeah. Okay, so
Yikes.
I'm sure that you guys still thought of some people even though you didn't say them. So now think of some people who you would consider holy people, since nobody shared earlier. Are the people who you guys were thinking of in both lists, did some of them kind of appear in both lists? Cool. So kind of what I got from that is that greatness is almost equivalent to holiness in terms of faith. And so I wanted to share with you a story from the gospel. And Jesus does many miracles and they're all really great, but I wanted to share the story of Jesus walking on the water. And this time, instead of, whenever I'm kind of talking about it, instead of focusing on Jesus walking on the water, which is so cool, but think about Peter, because he also walked on the water. So the story starts off, and Jesus sends his disciples ahead of him out on the boat, and then while they're on the sea, the winds are really strong and the waves are like beating the boat up. And then Jesus comes walking on the water towards them. And it says that they cried out in fear. At once, Jesus spoke to them and said, "Take courage, it is I. Do not be afraid." Peter said to him in reply, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." He said to him, "Come." Peter got out of the boat and began to walk on the water towards Jesus. But when he saw how strong the wind was, he became frightened, and beginning to sink, he cried out, "Lord, save me." Immediately, Jesus stretched out his hand and caught him, and said to him, "O you of little faith, why did you doubt?" And I think sometimes we give Peter a hard time because, like, a lot of people read this and they're like, Peter, why'd you doubt? Like, come on. But the thing about it is Jesus called him to greatness right then and there. And Peter was kind of questioning him, like, okay, Jesus, if this is really you, call me out. And so Jesus is like, okay, come on out on the water. And now Peter's thinking, what did I get myself into? I'm a fisherman. I know that I can't walk on the water. What is going on? So he has a decision. He could either stay in the boat or answer his call to greatness and get out of the boat. And that's what he does. He gets out of the boat and he starts walking on water. Like, it's crazy, right? And yes, he gets caught up in the waves and he sees how strong they are. And then he realizes that he starts to sink and he calls out for help. And I love it. It says immediately Jesus was there and saved him. So God does the same thing in our lives. He comes to us in our daily lives where everything's crazy and everything's going on, and he calls us to get out of our boats. And we can do this. We can answer this call to greatness, answer this call to holiness, and be these holy people. We just need to keep our eyes above the waves. And so, what are the waves in our lives, and how can we keep our eyes above the waves? So, the waves in our lives will look different for each and every person. For me, my waves are school, the responsibilities that I have, preparing for the future, and the fact that I don't know where I'm going to be next year at this time kind of freaks me out. And so all of this kind of adds up and are the waves in my life. And sometimes I just want to crouch down in my little boat where I know that I'm safe, and even though I'm still being rocked, I'm safe. But Jesus calls us out. He calls us to get out of our boats. So I propose that there are 3 things that will help us to answer this call to holiness. 1, faith community, daily prayer, and persistence. So first off, community. Like I said, I was going to talk about camp. And at camp, one of the things that they expected out of us was us to be constantly striving for holiness. It was really easy. It was usually easy whenever I was there because I was surrounded by people who we all had the same goal in mind, to become closer to God. We were there to support each other, love each other. And I know that if it wasn't for my brothers and sisters at Cove Crest, I wouldn't have been able to do and experience all the things that I did this summer. And throughout the summer, they really encouraged, they really stressed how important community and accountability is in our faith. Because if we're expected to do it on our own, it won't happen, we'll fail. And so whenever I came back, I sat down with my roommate and we were catching up, and then we decided to become each other's accountability partners. And we sat down and made a plan that we were going to say morning prayer together every morning, go to confession at least once a month, and there was other things on the list as well. But the thing about it is, we not only need people to help support us and be there for us, but we also need that community to help challenge us and move us forward. And so one of the other summer missionaries, his name is Dan, he shared so much with us and with the teens. And he was one of those people where if he came up and asked you oh, hey, how's it going? He wouldn't be fine with the answer, oh, I'm doing good. He'd be like, but really, how's it going? And he would pray for you right then and there. And he also challenged us a lot. For example, on some of the days in our schedules were just so packed that we only had holy half hours, but Dan encouraged us challenged us to take a holy hour every single morning. And I mean, it was a Catholic camp. We couldn't be no, we're only going to do a half hour prayer week. So we had to step up to the challenge. And we all knew that he was leading us to holiness through his encouragement and challenges. And that kind of leads me to the second point, daily prayer. As I mentioned, we had a holy hour every single morning. And so on the mornings where we were only supposed to have a holy half hour, but then moved it to a holy hour, we had to be in the chapel at 6:30 in the morning. And we didn't get to bed till 11:30 or midnight at night. So that was kind of a challenge. But we knew that we would need it and that it would be worth it, and it was. Because we needed that time to be silent, to listen, to ask God for what we wanted, tell him where we're at, and listen to him telling us where we needed to go. And we had a jam-packed schedule every single day, so it was really good to have that time to reflect on how God was working in us and through us. And so leaving camp, I knew that I wanted to make prayer a part of my daily life. And I was being practical. I was okay, I'm going to pray 30 minutes every day. And I kept it up for a while. But then school started and the waves kind of started to get a little rough and seem a little daunting. But I had ordered a few books that I had wanted to read to help me grow in my faith. And they came in, and one of them was The Diary of St. Maria Faustina. And if you don't know who St. Faustina is, she has a really special relationship with Jesus, and he actually appeared to her. And so in her diary, you can really see how intimate and close her relationship was, and it has where Jesus spoke directly to her. And so I want to share with you one of the things that Jesus said to her. He says, When you reflect upon what I tell you in the depths of your heart, you profit more than if you had read many books. Oh, if souls would only want to listen to my voice when I am speaking in the depths of their hearts, they would reach the peak of holiness in a short time. And it just really hit me that the books that I had gotten, yes, they would help me grow in my faith, but at this stage in my life, prayer is more important than spending time reading these books. Taking the time to have quiet time, to listen to God speaking to my heart is more important. And it stressed why I wanted to make time for prayer in my daily life in the first place. Because, like it says, when we listen to God speaking to the depths of our hearts, we can answer our call to holiness so much quicker. But we have to make time for prayer because that is our communication with God. And so if we don't make time for communication with Him, how are we supposed to listen? And I have a little bit of a confession to make. I mentioned that I wanted to pray 30 minutes a day. Well, that hasn't really happened. I've kind of taken my eyes off Christ and gotten consumed above the waves. But that leads me to the third point, which is we need persistence. And so if we think back to the story of Peter, whenever he was walking on the water and he got caught up in the waves, whenever he realized he was sinking, he called out for help. But if he wouldn't have realized that he was sinking, he would have drowned. So we have to be able to recognize when we get distracted and call out for help. Whenever I realized that I wasn't really meeting the goals I had set for myself, I relied on my community and God, and I asked Him for help and forgiveness. This past week was really crazy for me. I know everybody has tests and everything going on. Well, last week was my really crazy week. I had a lot of homework, a group project, 2 tests, on top of everything else that I had to do. And I think I probably spent about an hour total for the entire week in quiet time prayer, whenever I usually try to do at least 15 to 30 minutes. But I knew going into the week that it was going to be a rough week, and so I had asked some of my sisters from Cove Crest to pray for me through the week. And I know that through their prayers and support and God, that was literally the only way that I made it through last week. Because I know I couldn't have done it alone. And I didn't make it to the chapel or have that personal prayer time like I had said, but I still tried to make God a part of the craziness. And the way that I did that was through positivity and looking for God in the little things in my day. So when people would ask me how my week was going, they usually got a long answer because I would be like, oh, I'm kind of stressed, I have all this stuff going on. But things are going good. It's been better, but it's not bad. And whenever I would be studying here, I knew that it wasn't going to be long and I didn't really have much time, but I would go into the little reservation chapel and just sit in there and be like, okay, God, this is what's going on. I really need your help. I want to see you in everything that I'm doing, whether it be preparing for awakenings, tutoring, doing ridiculous math problems, whatever. Just help me see you in the little aspects of my day. And I'm not saying that this makes me holy, but in the midst of my crazy week, that's how I was able to focus, keep my eyes above the waves a little bit by keeping positive and seeing Him in the little things. But it didn't always happen. I slipped up a few times because it's so easy to get caught up in the waves of our lives through negativity, busyness, fear, and everything else that we have going on. But we're called to step out of our comfort zones and step into greatness. So kind of putting it all back together, the world offers us this comfort, but we were not made for comfort. We were made for greatness. And the way that we live out this greatness is by getting out of our boats and keeping our eyes on Christ in the midst of the waves of our lives. And we do this by finding a faith community, having time every day to listen to God speaking to the depths of our hearts, and asking for help when we fall short of this holiness, when we start to sink. Because we have to remember that whenever we start to sink, God will always be there to catch us.